trapped inside with the Dogman outside. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I had a pretty crazy and harrowing Dogman experience happen to me just a year ago. I had not one, but multiple instances of becoming aware that I was being watched by something the size and shape of a man, but a kind of a man with a canine-shaped head. In my mind, this could be nothing other than the North American upright walking canid, better known as the Dogman. I had been invited to house-sit somebody's home in the neighborhood that I had grown up in, north of Detroit in Michigan. I don't want to say too much about the location because the family still occupies that house for some reason. Maybe the Dogman doesn't harass them the way it harassed me. Maybe it only comes out to look at strangers. I would not call the house in question a mansion, but it is certainly a large old place. Originally built to house several generations of a large clan, much of it has been unoccupied, or even closed down, since the 1970s. These days, the remaining family who live there go away for a tropical vacation each year as autumn and winter come on. Although I never knew these people myself, I was suggested as a house sitter to them by a mutual friend, and I found the offer too good to turn down. I had been inside that house once during my childhood, ironically, at a neighborhood Halloween party. They remembered my parents, if not the childhood version of myself, and so I ended up traveling all the way back to my hometown. It can be very strange going back to your hometown when you've been away over 10 years. To say I had mixed feelings would be an understatement, but I was looking forward to the privacy and the chance to get some work done on my writing. I had no idea that I wouldn't even get to be there long enough to write a greeting card, let alone a novel. So I showed up at the place really tired from my travels, but I had to help the family carry some heavy boxes out to a truck, stuff they were putting into storage. By the time they finally left for their vacation, I barely had strength to toast some bread for my dinner and crash out on one of the luxuriant couches in one of the remarkably comfortable rooms in that house. I don't know if I was in the living room or the sitting room or the drawing room, but that couch and those pillows were softer than my bed at home, and I found myself falling asleep before I even knew it. I think it was a few hours later, around midnight, that I awoke with a start, certain that I had just heard a horrible sound or noise. I was sitting up on the couch, feeling my heart beating like a bongo inside my chest as I tried in vain to remember what had woken me up. When I heard no further loud noises, I began to think that I had simply dreamed that I heard a loud noise. Deciding that made the most sense, I laid my head back and closed my eyes. From outside came a terrible screaming. I don't even know how to describe it. Imagine if the sound of throwing up was a language. I'm only half joking. I'm trying to make sure you understand that this was the scariest animal sound I ever heard. At least I was pretty sure it was some sort of shout or a cry of a large forest creature. That got me standing up, walking around the room, looking for lights and lamps to turn on. I was hyperventilating, and my heart was pounding so fast that I was afraid I was going to pass out. What I didn't at first realize was that turning the lights on actually made it harder to see out of the windows. The light reflected off the glass, and all I could see was a reflection of the room inside instead of a lit-up version of the yard. I turned out one lamp and squinted into the darkness outside the window near it. It was very dimly lit out there from ambient lighting, but I could make out that the back of the property had some thick forest land on it. I wondered how far back into those woods the property line extended. I had noticed that there was no other house on this block, and now, looking out the back, I realized how far away from civilization I had traveled. I started to figure that the animal sound I heard was probably a barred owl or something like that. I probably hear a lot of strange-sounding creatures while staying out there, so I should probably just shrug my shoulders and go back to sleep. I went around the room turning off the lamps until there was only one left, situated on a table directly in front of a window. I clicked that light off too, eager to get back to sleeping. But what I saw beyond the now darkened window was somewhat game-changing. I saw some kind of a dog bear standing up outside of there, but he was bent over at the waist and sneaking a peek in at me. I say dog because it had pointed ears up on top and it had a long snout and it had fangs. The head was like a German shepherd but with bushier fur that was colored gray. But it was standing up sort of like a bear does, which is why I said dog bear. Come to think of it, I don't know if bears bend over at the waist the way I saw this animal doing. So maybe a better term might have been dog man, or at least dog ape. Maybe it was a kind of Sasquatch because I've heard they like to spy on humans, and that's exactly what I caught this thing doing. Now, as soon as our eyes met, that big creature turned and left. It didn't panic and race away. It just saw me, and then unemotionally turned around to leave. It didn't seem scared of me, but it also didn't seem to want to deal with me seeing it there either. I leaned down to continue watching it as it walked away, but it had left before I could even do that. More than a little nervous, I ran upstairs, not really knowing where I was heading. It was hard to see because my eyes were all teared up in shock. I wasn't crying. It was just a physical reaction to the shock of what I'd seen. Whatever I'd seen. I found the wall switch for the hallway light and turned all of them on bright. I wanted every shadow eliminated, every corner lit. There was a hallway with doors on either side. I chose one randomly and threw it open, backing away, half expecting Dracula to jump out at me. I found a bedroom and looked outside the window next to the bed. It was a view of the back lawn and garden, with a quaint stone pathway leading to the woods. There was a sort of a patio that I guess they might have had barbecues on during the summer. There were no dog-headed monkeys out there, though. In fact, the only things I saw moving around were leaves being blown by the wind. I thought about how I was going to have to rake those leaves for the next 2 months, and that got me to start thinking about normal things again. I couldn't have seen a bear with a dog head. I was just tired and I imagined it. But oh boy, what a realistic figment of my imagination. It was not like seeing an exotic creature out there. It was almost more like a visitation by a frightening, threatening alien. Those eyes betrayed intelligence, or at the very least, they looked to hide a cunning mind. Banishing the entire experience as a waking dream, I allowed myself to get swallowed up in the softness of the big old-fashioned bed, and soon I was asleep again, having my usual recurring dream. It goes like this. I'm in a tiny ticket booth in the front of an old vintage movie theater. The line of people out front is growing longer and longer, and I can't sell the tickets fast enough. Individuals in the crowd grow hostile and swarm the booth from both sides, trying to knock it down and get at me inside there. I kept hearing a tapping noise like someone was tapping on the glass of the ticket booth. After a while, that part of the dream became the most real part, and I opened my eyes to see where I actually was. I was not in a movie theater ticket booth. I was in that big soft bed, lying on my side, facing the window. And outside that window, there was a living, hairy nightmare looking back in at me. It was tapping on the glass with its long claws on its monster hands. And that was what woke me up. A sound can't wake you up unless it exists in the real world. I could not have been dreaming that sound, or else I would have continued dreaming about it. I would not have awakened. I was lying there looking out the window at something that had to have actually been there. But I was on the second floor of the house. If that was a dogman out there, then it must be supernatural in some way, or else I must be losing my mind. The instant that the dog-headed beast saw me looking back at him, he reared back in sudden alarm and began a rough kind of almost barking. It was a cross between shouting at me and coughing at me. Possibly it was the creature's language, but just as possibly it was mere animal noise. The monster started banging the palms of its claws on the wall of the house on either side of the glass. Its movements sped up to a frenzy, and it also tried banging on the glass of the window itself. It was trying to get in at me. I climbed out of bed, tripping on the blanket and taking a header into the carpet. Eventually, I locked myself in the bedroom closet, and I had a good long cry. I had seen a dog-headed man on the grounds. That was pretty crazy. Now, I had seen this vicious, fang-faced monstrosity up 20 or 25 feet in the air, and that was doubly impossible. I wondered if that was what it felt like to lose your mind, you know? Either I was in danger for my life from that thing, or else I was no longer even sane. I heard the glass break as the dogman banged on the old window in the older house. Everything was about to be lost. Everything was about to be over. I felt deep self-pity and resigned myself to a pathetic and painful demise as I huddled in the dark corner of that closet. I don't remember falling asleep, but I remember how stiff my entire body was when sunlight finally came streaming through the cracks in the closet the next morning. Had I really seen a dogman floating outside a second-story window the night before? Even before I walked back into the bedroom, I felt ashamed at how I had acted that night before. Even if there were such things as dogman, surely there are no dogmen that can float. I walked over to the window in question and I tensed up all over as I saw that there was a big crack running through it, and that there were tiny shards of glass all over the rug underneath. I located a dustpan and brush and began to clean up the mess, wondering how the window could have gotten broken if I had imagined the dogman. And that was when I got a good look at the outside of that window. There was a ledge right beneath it, and that ledge was a short hop from another roof, which was a short hop up from the back porch. The dogman wasn't hovering outside the window the night prior. The dogman had simply climbed up. It didn't look hard to do. Any kid fairly skilled at climbing could have accomplished it. I made arrangements to be out of that house before the sun went down. I ended up in a lot of trouble with the family that owns the place, so much so that it would be an entirely new story to even begin to get into any of that. I don't care. Even if it cost me all my money, I still would have done the same thing. There was no way I could even consider staying one more night, trapped inside, with the dogman outside. Dogman in my window, submitted by Ben from the comments. Dear Scary Stories NYC, my name is Ben. I live in Michigan, and I saw the dogman outside my trailer window one night. That's how I know the Michigan dogman is really a thing. This happened to me about 16 years ago when I was 19 or 20. Actually, maybe a year before that window incident, I had a very strange experience in the same location that confused me at the time. Now looking back on it, considering what we later saw outside that window, I would have to guess that maybe I've actually had 2 dogman encounters. Let me tell you what happened, and then you can tell me what you think in the comments. Back then, I was living with my dad in his trailer, which he had on a plot of wooded land that was about 20 acres. My friend and I had built ourselves a kind of a fort out of logs. It was about 8 feet by 12 and about 6.5 feet high. We had a piece of steel siding we threw up on top as a roof, but it only covered about half the fort. We had no door per se. We had bungeed together a bunch of pine brush to block the entrance. The fort was just past the field behind the trailer, at the edge of the wood line, and it wasn't too far further into those woods, about 100 or 120 feet max, before that forest became a swamp. About 100 yards to the east of us was another tree line. So it was around 11 or 12 at night, and we had built a pit and a fire to roast weenies over. Suddenly, as we restocked the fire, we started to hear coyotes past that eastern tree line. Those trees were about as far away as the right field foul pole is from home plate, and it sounded like the barking and howling was coming from just beyond. They were carrying on in a ridiculous and annoying fashion. My friend was moaning and complaining, wishing those coyotes would shut up already. As soon as he asked for them to be quiet, as if on cue, we heard this horrible sound that almost made us jump out of our skin. It was like a woman, but a deeper-voiced woman, was screaming at the top of her lungs. I don't know if it was a human or an animal, and I'm not saying that I know it was a female. I'm just trying to compare what we heard to something you might be familiar with. So, the way it went was those coyotes made a fuss, then the screaming large woman sound happened, then there was a bit more of the coyotes seeming incredibly agitated, obviously in reaction to that scream. After that, everything went silent for a couple of minutes. And when I say silent, I mean no sound at all. Even the crickets stopped. I could literally hear my friend breathing, and he sounded pretty scared. I whispered, asking my friend what that screaming was, but he whispered back, "I don't know, bro." We were inside our fort, hoping that if we were out of sight, we'd also stay out of mind of whatever the heck was out there that night. We heard something heavy moving around outside there. Remember, we never finished putting a ceiling on that fort, and we had a door made of pine needles bound together. We were in no way safe inside that fragile structure, and it was not comforting to hear whatever or whoever that was tramping around out there. We were shaking in our boots, listening to the thump, 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 thump reverberations, as though whatever it was walking up on two legs. My friend and I just stared at each other, knowing we were in trouble. The feeble weapons we had with us would not defend us against something as large as that creature outside obviously was. Then we heard a deep, loud snort, and then whatever it was went crashing into the swamp. Not just running, literally crashing, breaking brush and branches as it went. We heard it hit the water in the swamp and then keep going without losing any momentum. Back then I was around 5'9" or maybe a little taller, and that swamp was about thigh deep on me. For something to splash into that and keep moving just as quickly, it had to have been massive, just huge. Believe me, neither of us got any sleep that night. We just sat there listening. As soon as it got light, we ran into Dad's trailer. At the time, I didn't know what to think that was, but I think that I know now. I think it was a Dogman, and I think that mainly because of the second incident, which happened a year later when I was around 20. This story also involved that same friend. It was some time after the first incident, enough so that it wasn't fresh in our minds, but still a kind of a recent happening. We were in the trailer, which was a double wide. My room was on the end. We had been chilling and relaxing, listening to music. It was about 11 or midnight, and I had realized I had forgotten to let my dog out. He was a little rat dog, a terrier-chihuahua mix. So I called him and I walked down the hallway to the front door and opened it, then told him to go outside potty. Well, he stopped right at that door and he would not go out. I even went so far as to push him with my foot to get him out onto the porch, but he ran right back in and stood behind me instead. This was odd, considering usually he would bolt outside as soon as the door opened, even if he wasn't told to. I figured, well, maybe he just doesn't have to go. I returned to my room and I was talking to my friend when we heard a loud thump outside the window. Like when you throw a heavy log and it hits the ground, that sort of a sound. We both looked up toward that window, and it was covered by a thin and flat shade pulled down to cover the glass. The shade was illuminated from outside by a post light out front by the driveway about 6 feet high and about 12 feet from my window. What we saw next, through that closed shade, even 16 years later, still has me keeping curtains on my windows at night because looking out into the dark still makes me uncomfortable. We saw a shadow rise up into the window. The first thing I noticed was pointy ears as it rose. I could make out a dog-like snout, a huge head. Not sure exactly how huge, but it had to be over 2 feet from the tip of its snout to the back of the skull. It had its snout down at first, then it raised its head up to look more straight on in the direction it was looking in, and the ears twitched like they would if a fly was buzzing on your dog's ear. And then it was gone. This viewing of it lasted maybe 8 to 10 seconds. I thought I was seeing things, like maybe the neighbor's German Shepherd got loose and was trying to get bugs around the light. Funny how in these cases your mind tries to logically alter what you've seen. Logic quickly told me that dog would have had to jump to cast that shadow, and quite high as well. This thing rose up slowly. Remember, I was in a double wide. My room was on the end. The light was 12 feet out front of my window, and it was 6 feet off the ground. I ran the incident back and realized the shadow from the ears was about 3 inches from the top of the window at the tips. I swore I was seeing things until my friend asked, "What the F was that?" I had no answer for him. I was just as shocked as he was. I had no clue what a Dogman was back then. I didn't hear about what it was until maybe 5 years ago. As I had mentioned, it still makes me uncomfortable to have bare windows at night and no curtain. Had that shade not been drawn down, I have no doubt what was on the other side would have been absolutely terrifying. And in a way, I'm glad I only saw the shadow. These days, I'm now living about 45 minutes away from that location. I still don't go into the woods without a weapon. I consider myself lucky having technically not seen one of these face to face, so I definitely feel for people who bump into them and get a good detailed look, and or have one staring at them from the woodline or right in the window tapping on the glass. I want to tell my fellow Michiganders to be safe, as you know what season is right around the corner. We humans may not be the only hunters out there in the wilderness, so if you feel something is off, or if you get a bad vibe, please listen to your instincts. That is all. Stay safe out there. Ben. Hey, did you catch our episode yesterday? We were pretty proud of this one. We hope you don't miss it. And now, it's time to bust a rhyme. She's so badass, that Sandra Freeman. She's like Captain Kirk, about to beamin'. Whether brunette, redhead, blue, or blondra, you must respect our EP Sandra. Please join us in thanking today's executive producer, Sandra Freeman. She's one of our $10 members, which means she's so cool she already watched this video yesterday. She also gets to see our weekly secret videos and our 21 hours of secret uncensored Dogman videos, far too wild to ever run on this channel. Now here's our spokesdog Henry Lee Dogman to fill in any details I may have left out. Hank? Thanks for watching till the end. If you liked what you saw, please consider clicking like on the video or sharing it with your friends and family that you think might also be interested. If you would like to see more of our work, please consider subscribing and hitting that bell icon next to the subscribe button so that YouTube will alert you when we put out a new video. To become a channel member and gain access to our special perks, you can click that join link under each of our videos. Another option is to join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. You can join for as little as 99 cents on YouTube or $1.50 at peterbernard.com. And that gains you access to our weekly secret uncensored episodes. If you'd like to see our 21 hours of archives of uncensored Dogman stories, then please join at the $3 level or above. To get to watch our shows in advance of the public, please join at our $10 level. That gets you all the perks. If you join our channel memberships, you need to check our community page here on YouTube in order to get the links to the secret videos and other perks. If you're in the PayPal Subscribers Club, Peter will email you all the news and links himself. Once joining the PayPal Club, which is Peter's homemade club, please give him a chance to see that you've joined and to compose you a personal welcome email, as none of that is automated. But whichever you join, we'll name you an executive producer for the next available episode. Do you have a scary experience that you'd like to share with us? You can email us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or call our Scary Stories voicemail hotline at 804-LA-SCARY. That's 804-537-2279. It's a Google voicemail box, so that means it keeps cutting off after every 3 minutes. If your story is longer than that, please keep calling back and we can piece it together on our end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.